I'm David Thompson, City Club's Portland's board treasurer. For over 100 years, City Club of Portland is where civic-minded people come together to make Portland and Oregon a better place for everyone to live, work, and explore. We are gathered here today at the Sentinel Hotel, along with all of you listening on OPB and viewing on OpenSignal or YouTube. The generous support of City Club's corporate and media partners enables us to put on the state's best civic programs week after week. Our media partner is Oregon Business Magazine, and our current Friday Forum sponsors are Family Care, Northwest Health Foundation, and Northwest Natural. Please show our appreciation for all of them. Oregon and Portland maintain diplomatic relationships with other countries as an important part of economic development and trade relations. With the new federal administration shaking up international relations, our guests will explore the potential impact of new proposed policies on local and statewide economic interests. I am pleased to introduce today's speakers. First, John Blackwell is a professional forester with a broad history of civic engagement. As the founding president and executive director of the World Forestry Center, and is the former chair of both the Oregon Parks and Recreations Commission and the Oregon Board of Forestry. He serves as the Honorary Consulate General of Malaysia. He is also an avid bicyclist and motorcyclist. John, welcome. Next, Robert Manicke is partner at Stoel Rives, where he has practiced mainly state and local tax law for the last 20 years. Robert's interest in Germany began as a matter of survival when he, at 13 years, his family suddenly moved from a small town in Washington to what is now West Berlin. Robert attended a German high school for 2 years and quickly learned German with the support of a sympathetic school principal. In 2012, Robert was appointed as the Honorary Consulate of the Federal Republic of Germany for Oregon and Idaho, and now serves as Dean of the Oregon Consulate Corps. Please welcome Robert Manicke. Birol Yesilada is Professor of Political Science and International Studies and holder of an endowed chair in Contemporary Turkish Studies at the Mark Hatfield School of Government at Portland State University. He is an expert in international political economy and global power transitions. He has been invited to consult as various departments of the U.S. government, the Council of Foreign Relations, Barclay Capital, and the World Bank. In 2003, the White House invited him to take part on the commission that drafted the new Constitution of Afghanistan. Please welcome Birol Yesilada. And to guide us in today's conversation, our moderator is Commissioner Dan Saltzman. Dan is currently serving his 5th term as Portland City Commissioner and has been a commissioner in charge of 11 bureaus in his 18-year-plus years in office. Dan served as Multnomah County Commissioner from 1993 to 1998 and has also served on the Board of Directors for Portland Community College. Please join me in welcoming all of today's speakers.
Well, thank you, David. As David said, I'm City Commissioner Dan Saltzman, and we're here today to have a discussion about international relations and impacts on the Oregon economy. We are being telecast by Oregon Public Broadcasting, or I should say broadcast by Oregon Public Broadcasting. And we're also here in the City Club's 100th anniversary year, so we appreciate the longevity of the City Club. It's been a real asset to our city, one which we all appreciate very much. So I thought I'd maybe start with Robert, the Dean of the Consular Corps, and maybe give us all just an idea of what it is like to be an Honorary Consul General. How does one become an Honorary Consul General? Is it Is it as glamorous as it sounds, or are there more mundane aspects to it? Maybe you can just fill us in.
Thank you, Commissioner Saltzman. I think most of us are rooted here in the Oregon area and are members of the community. We are appointed by a country. I am the Honorary Consul for Germany. I think I got there because I had served for about 12 years on the board of the German International School and was tapped on the shoulder to serve in that capacity. After my appointment, I had to be cleared by the U.S. State Department. I think that's true for all of us. And my duties include helping German citizens with problems that they encounter. Yesterday, a stolen passport out of a car that was broken into. Also, cultural affairs and maintaining business affairs, good relations for the benefit of the German companies that are headquartered here.
Great, thank you, Robert. Beerold, I'd like to ask you, as a professor at Portland State University, we have heard a lot about, I think PSU has probably, I think, 2,000, upwards of 2,000 international students. I'm wondering what impact some of the immigration policies or discussions of immigration policies at the national level have had on enrollment or foreign students' interest in attending PSU.
Well, there has been an impact. We have less applications from some of the countries that are directly targeted for extra scrutiny. But this is now a national phenomenon. It's not just us. We are concerned about what's going to happen down the road. We are hearing that a lot of students are preferring to go to universities in Canada and also in Western Europe. So it is a concern.
Yes, okay. Thank you. John, you were appointed Honorary Consul for Malaysia, I believe in 2007. Could you tell us a little bit about what economic relationships Oregon and Malaysia have?
Yes, happy to, Dan. Malaysia is terribly important to Oregon. Malaysia is Oregon's third largest trading partner behind Canada and China. So here in Oregon, 1 out of 5 jobs is dependent upon trade, is related to trade in some way, shape, or form. Oregon exports $20 billion worth of product annually abroad, and our biggest third largest purchaser is the country of Malaysia. So trade is powerfully important between Malaysia and Oregon. We send a lot of electronics, wheat, their direction. We buy palm oil, we buy a lot of clothing. A lot of your clothing labels today will have made in Malaysia in them. Malaysia is a very important trading partner.
And what is the population of Malaysia?
Great question, I can't answer. Okay. Don't have a clue.
Okay. So I guess I'll go back to Robert and John both, but so what impact have the Trump administration's international policy development had on residents of Germany and Malaysia, both residents in those countries, but also residents in our country from those countries?
I can say that when shortly after the election, I was in Washington, D.C. All of the honorary consuls for Germany were invited to the embassy there, and everyone in the embassy was very surprised at the outcome of the election. I think that's also true nationwide here, however, so nothing terribly unusual about that. I will say that I have not noticed a major disruption from here in Oregon in terms of the new policies. There are very, very deep, strong ties between Oregon and Germany. A lot of foreign direct investment. 6 major companies from Germany have account for about 10,000 jobs here in the Portland area, and I don't really see that jeopardized at this point.
So you're not seeing any reticence of some of the major German companies that have a major presence here in Oregon? Any reticence in sending employees here at all?
Not so far. No, not so far. I think that There has been perhaps an uptick in the number of German citizens who want to renew their passports, keep them current, people who want to apply for citizenship under German law, which is possible for a fair number of people. But I think that the depth of the relationship is simply so profound that it's hard to see at this point any significant shift.
John, do you have anything to add on that in terms of companies that are based in Malaysia with presence here in Oregon?
No, I don't see it, Dan. I was talking with students, Roosevelt students, earlier on these topics, and I think because of the importance of trade, because of a strong Malaysian population here, no, I've just not seen those negative influences. Maybe to build on an earlier question that you asked Robert about the roles of our responsibilities. It's interesting for me that I represent there are 30 honorary consuls in Oregon representing other countries. I represent the only country of Islam, which has interesting connotations with respect to your question. And we consider ourselves diplomats, of course, Robert and I, and the members of the Consular Corps. And here we are sitting having lunch, engaging over a meal. If it were dinner, we would have a glass of wine in front of us, which would help lubricate the conversation in the areas of diplomacy. And, you know, I'm reminded of that old expression that diplomacy is the stuff of protocol, vitriol, and alcohol. In my case, when I interface with my Malaysian visitors, alcohol is not a part of that formula. And so the diplomacy of a nice glass of wine over dinner when you're discussing business takes on a different tone. You might have a nice hot cup of chocolate.
Great, thank you. Thank you, John. Beerold, do you have anything you'd like to add in terms of insights into impacts of companies outside of the United States and concerns about sending employees to this country?
Well, it's such a fluid situation that one wonders what's going to be down the end of the road. It's really uncertain. We are seeing policies changing every day. Policies that were very scary until yesterday concerning NAFTA, for example, and what that would mean for businesses in Oregon. And all of a sudden, well, it's on hold. We're not going to pull out of NAFTA. We're just going to have to renegotiate it. That's fine. But I am concerned about certain requirements now. Some of them are quite legit, like scares over laptops and so forth. How it's impacting business people flying back and forth to United States. And if that gets extended even further, I don't know how the company is going to deal with that unless you can use the cloud. But for the businesses, it is a bit of an uncertainty, and it goes both ways.
Great. Just want to remind our listeners, you're listening to the City Club of Portland on Oregon Public Broadcasting, and our topic today is international relations impacts on Oregon's economy. And I guess I would like to ask, maybe start with Robert again. We have some 203 countries that bought Oregon-made goods and services, including billions of dollars in annual exports to top markets like Canada, China, and Malaysia. And Oregon goods and exports have grown 25% faster than the state gross domestic product since 2003. Do we think these numbers are going to continue to grow at such a phenomenal clip that we've seen in the last 10, 15 years?
I guess I have no reason to really doubt that at this point. I think that I think John might be in a better position to field this question. The country I represent is an exporter of its own right and very focused on exports, and so that much of the trade and investment flows in this direction.
John, do you want to add anything about Oregon's
Sure.
phenomenal export growth?
Yeah, thank you. I'm anxious about it because of the prospective demise of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, of course. The Trans-Pacific Partnership is in Oregon's best interest, it's in this country's best interest, it's in everybody's best interest. Nike, for instance, had pledged if the Trans-Pacific Partnership were to be approved that they'd create 10,000 new jobs in America. My favorite read of this last year was Phil Knight's autobiography, Shoe Dog. He talks about how a nation with free trade borders is a nation without weapons. And I think that's a great lesson for us, that trade is the answer to so many of our problems. And I think it's essential that we recognize agreements that perpetuate that trade, and I'm hopeful.
Great. Beerold, would you like to comment on that? Yes.
The Trans-Pacific Partnership represented, I'm saying represented because we have pulled out of it, world's 40% of world's GDP and about 1/3 of world's trade. Now, United States is the country that wrote the international regime of international free trade after World War II. And I am really surprised at the rise of protectionism with this administration that threatens free trade and potentially could spill over into tariff wars that nobody will win. Talks of up to 45% tariffs on China will not just stay in a one-way action. It will immediately trigger tariff wars. Last time we had tariff wars, it was during the interwar period, and the consequences were just devastating, as we all know, because tariff wars also turn into monetary wars. Now, globalization is a very complex issue. There are winners, losers, but the net losers of tariffs are the consumers. Local consumers are the net losers. There's no doubt about that. We can talk any which way you want to talk about it.
So we hear
I'm
a lot of
concerned.
discussion about pulling out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. There's discussion about pulling out of the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. Does that just mean that things go back to the old days where countries who feel threatened by an exporting industry impose tariffs on those goods? Do these partnership agreements basically remove tariffs?
Well, TPP, when it was signed, targeted 18,000 tariffs for reduction. For reduction and elimination of many. For example, it would have opened markets for agricultural exports from the United States, manufacturing exports. So farmers and dairy producers are not happy with that. Auto businesses would have had access to Asian markets. And the other thing that's very troubling for me is that TPP included environmental protection clause, labor regulations and safety clause, which are not, people think that it's under the WTO. No, it's not. World Trade Organization's free trade regime doesn't have those, so this would have been a little stronger, a lot stronger down the road. And the worst of it is that even though it would have only added a marginal growth to US GDP, this is a huge market, and 15 years down the road, it would have made those markets more dependent on the United States bilaterally and multilaterally than otherwise. By abandoning TPP, we're basically letting the Chinese enter and fill the vacuum. And they don't care about labor regulations, protection, and environmental issues.
It's a staggering number to just think of 18,000 tariffs. I can't imagine all the things that must have tariffs on them. This is the Portland City Club, and you're listening on Oregon Public Broadcasting. Our topic is international relations impacts on Oregon economy. I'm City Commissioner Dan Saltzman, and we're joined by John Blackwell, who is the Honorary Consul General to Malaysia, for Malaysia, I should say, Robert Manicke, the Honorary Consul General for Germany, and Beerold Yesilada, Professor of Political Science and International Studies at Portland State University. So tell us, the typical Oregonian, I think we understand that our state economy depends a lot on our exports. And probably less so, I think we understand maybe less how reliant we are on imports. I guess anybody want to try to fill that side of the equation? And I think people understand we're an export-based economy. I'm not sure we understand really to what extent we're an import-based economy.
Well, I can take a stab at that. I think in terms of imports, obviously, look at automobiles, for example, but broader than just importing goods, I think we should look at importing investment, bringing investment to this state from other countries, from anywhere actually, but particularly from other countries in this setting, to create jobs. And that is something that a number of the countries represented by the Consular Corps have done. In addition to Germany, which I mentioned earlier, look at the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, Canada. Those are all major direct investors here, and that's why it's those countries are very export focused, and to be successful, they know that they have to do more than just ship the good products to other places. They have to build in this country so that they can be accepted here and have their stature elevated by creating jobs here. I think it's very important to continue to promote that.
Okay. Thanks, Robert. John or Beerold, anything you want to add on that topic, importance of imports to our state?
Yeah, I think I can add, Dan. In my case, Malaysia is always seeking capital, capital poor country. And so most of the pressure or invitations to me from my Malaysian counterparts is to introduce them to people who might be interested in investing in Malaysia, to build up their infrastructure, to build up an economy that's less dependent upon natural resources and more on value-added kinds of products. In Malaysia, the principal export crop that comes to North America is palm oil. And palm oil is an incredibly important source of fat in the diets of a lot of people of the world. Palm oil is also a valuable additive to diesel fuel, and we've legislated unfairly in America against palm oil as a diesel fuel additive, kind of a protection mechanism. But I think the direct answer to the question, Dan, is that Malaysia desperately needs capital and wants to see the Intels and the Nikes and the list goes on building factories in their countries.
Okay. Beerold?
I'd like to give a couple of examples of that. One is the recent beginnings of a potential trade war with Canada on lumber, imposition of tariffs. That's that's import from Canada, and that's going to immediately result in higher housing cost. Now, we can debate to what extent the Canadian provincial support subsidies to the lumber industry there, forestry and so forth, is against regulations. You can negotiate that stuff. I would prefer negotiation over a immediate, okay, I'm going to hit you with tariffs, and then let's see what happens. There is already an estimation that housing costs will go up upwards of $1,500 to $2,000 because of higher prices. And the other one, and this is going to become more and more serious, is import of farm workers who work, the farm hands, who are seasonal workers and who come into the United States from Mexico. You know, you build a wall, and wall is not just a physical one, and also your policies change. And then you're going to, you know, what kind of an image you're presenting? Well, who are willing to go become farm hands in the farms in the United States?
So you see our immigration policies having a detrimental impact on seasonal workers coming to the United States, and that in turn has an impact on many of our local businesses.
Yes, farmers have already started making noise about this.
Yes, okay. So I know, I think Canada and Mexico are the number 2 and 3 importing countries to the United States, and I'm presuming China is number 1. But when we talk about, and I know President Trump just yesterday said he was reconsidering the pulling out of the North American Free Trade Agreement, largely as a result of pressure from both Mexico and Canada. What's the best thing? Is it good to stay in these North American, these trade agreements? I know they're controversial. They were certainly controversial getting to where they've become the official trade policies of our countries, Canada, Mexico, and U.S. What's the average person to think about this?
I think the soundest policy is to work on fine-tuning, making them more fair. The whole goal is free and fair trade. And these treaties need to be revisited regularly for fine-tuning. I'll give you an example. One of the issues that the Trump administration is having a problem with is in a bilateral dispute in NAFTA between Canada and United States. The committee that for dispute resolution has 3 Canadians, 2 American representatives. Okay, fine. We can work on these things in a meaningful way rather than starting a trade war. Mm-hmm. We cannot afford to go back to protectionism because the implications of that is not only loss of jobs, and we're talking about millions of jobs will be threatened on both sides of these borders. We're also talking about increased cost of consumer goods to average citizens.
Right. So I know Oregon and Portland take a lot of pride in our green economy, building things in a sustainable manner, building energy-efficient buildings, conserving water. We're a great city to live and be able to get around from point A to point B other than relying on automobile necessarily. And I remember we just heard yesterday at City Council that we have some 470 companies now that are in one fashion or another exporting expertise, whether it's professional services or the actual goods themselves. And I know as somebody who has been leading the charge to increase our sustainability as a business sector, I was thrilled to hear we have 470 companies now that are involved in one capacity or another. Do you have any insights into that? Is this really happening in your assessments too?
I certainly am experiencing it. It's there's a lot of buzz around things like green building, passive house construction, cross-laminated lumber. These are concepts that are very important in Europe, and there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration with companies. We've had trade delegations come over to talk about these things. They're very interested in Portland because Portland does have a strong reputation in this area, and so just as we get basically government tourists here to look at our transit system, we also are on the map in Europe for sustainability. It's a great thing.
Great. John, are you seeing a strong interest in the Malaysian people and government about some of the expertise that we have here in Oregon on green economy?
Yes, absolutely. But we don't have a monopoly on that market. Probably the finest green building architect on a large scale is a Malaysian operating out of Kuala Lumpur. Dan, it triggers the answer on my part. At the World Forestry Center here in the Hill that many of you are familiar with, in our World Forest Institute, we bring in mid-career professional land managers, natural resource managers from around the world for a 6-month best practices exchange, so that we learn from other countries while they're learning at the same time from us. That program has had huge impact. We've now had more than 150 graduates pass through our program. It's endowed, heavily supported. simply a way of exchanging ideas with other nations. It has a big impact for me in Malaysia because Malaysia has an extractive mentality of transitioning native forests to palm oil plantations. That's been brought very much under control, but it's been brought under control by an exchange of ideas, an exchange of science, and not by regulation.
Beerold, you want to
Portland
comment?
State, we have a continuous traffic of foreign students, managers, and scholars who come in to learn about sustainable development policies, planning, management of watershed, for example. We are unique in this part of the United States in watershed management and governance because multi-layer administrations, we're talking about 2 countries, 2-3 states, depending on which watershed you're looking at, counties, tribal councils, and citizens' initiatives. And the way the Northwest has progressed in these areas have attracted the attention of not just people in East Asia, but in Europe. We actually had watershed management and sustainable development workshops for EU countries.
Great. So yeah, I was going to ask, sort of on a related note, that we, by the way, you're listening to Oregon Public Broadcasting, broadcasting the Portland City Club. Our topic is international relations impacts on Oregon's economy. And I was going to ask our panel to talk about what is it that we can be doing, all of us doing, to help some of the poorer nations on our globe, where famine, pestilence, war seems to be ravaging so many people's lives. Are there things we can be doing from the humanity perspective to help out, both our companies that you represent and the countries that you represent? Maybe I'll start with you, Robert Manicke.
Well, I think I'll speak briefly on behalf of the Oregon Consular Corps as an organization. About 10 years ago, the Consular Corps launched an initiative to really make an investment long-term in Oregon's outlook on international relations. We did that. I can't take credit for it. I wasn't a member then, but John, as a founder, started the Consular Corps Scholarship Fund. So the short answer is education. The students at Oregon colleges who receive scholarships from this fund use them to fund their trips abroad. Many of them are studying public health, social justice issues, and international economics, subjects like that. They come back very enriched, and we hope that they'll bring that expertise back to this community and help deepen the investment further. So I think one thing we can do is support that sort of educational initiative.
Great. John, anything to add on that?
So Dan,
What we can be doing more to help,
yes,
yes.
yes.
distressed countries?
Let me begin by saying why I'm an honorary consul. Probably many of you in the audience are wondering, why do you do it? What's the incentive? I mentioned we have 30 honorary consuls, actually 28 we have 2 full consul generals, true professional diplomats representing Mexico and Japan. The rest of us do this as volunteers. We're not compensated. We don't receive any expenses. We do it out of altruism and interest. And for me, I do it because in these frustrating times, maybe times are always frustrating, but for me, it's a way of being involved, being engaged, trying to make things a little bit better in the way that I can. So my answer is simply to try to get engaged in matters that concern you, because if you don't do it, no one else will.
Yeah. So Beerold, what's a young person who wants to be becomes a member of the international economy, wants to really study international relations? What would you recommend as how they go about doing that? What's the best path? Obviously, getting a college degree is part of that, and perhaps a graduate degree, but what sort of career choices should young people be looking out for if they want to be part of the international economy?
Well, there are a lot of opportunities. You can work for NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and we have some very good ones locally. who do wonderful works around the world. Mercy Corps comes to mind. There are plenty others, large and small, corporations, federal government. If you're interested in trade, a lot of opportunities there, investment, and so forth. But not just education through the formal education of taking classes from me and others, but get involved, go out there, see the world. There are plenty of scholarship opportunities to go travel and see the world. What you will see is that people are all alike. We have wonderful studies to show that people generally want the same thing around the world. A good life, healthy life, financial security, better future for their kids, and they want to be left alone by governments. This is
That's a universal. That's a universal.
It's a universal message.
Yeah. Okay.
We're not different, and we need to work to get rid of xenophobia. That's probably the most serious obstacle in promoting this internationalism.
Right. Robert, do you have anything you want to chime? What's the best path for a young person that wants to seek a career in the international economy?
Well, I was just out at Pacific University earlier this week talking to students of German about job opportunities, and the advice overwhelmingly, including from Beerol's colleague at PSU, is study abroad if you can, and stay as long as you can. Do it while you are not paying a mortgage and not otherwise saddled, so that you can prolong it as much as possible and really understand how people live in other countries, so that you can absorb those similarities.
And I would imagine being bilingual or trilingual is a huge asset in that kind of a career quest.
Absolutely, and even if you're not very good at the foreign language, by making the effort to someone who is otherwise always having to speak English and get to your level, you can humanize yourself and create and drop some barriers in the relationship.
Right. So I would love to ask you, Robert, to ask a question of Beerold about the Consular Corps, or give him a fact about the Consular Corps that maybe we don't know.
A fact about the Consular Corps. Okay. John already mentioned that we have 2 consuls general who are here full time. Okay. Here's a trick question. Which representative in the Consular Corps is not an honorary consul or a consul general, and it is an Asian representative, and I'll give you the answer. It is the trade.
Oh, you're gonna steal the thunder. Right? Birol, you want to take a shot at it before he gives you the answer?
Not a consul general, not an honorary consul general.
Right.
You hold the microphone. Yeah.
Neither of the above. I wouldn't know.
Okay.
The trade representative of Taipei, the Taiwanese representative.
Great.
They became a member last year.
John, do you have a factoid you want to impart to us about the Consul General Corps, the Consular Corps of Oregon? Something we don't know?
Well, I would hope that Birol knows that on May 15th, the Oregon Consular Corps Scholarship Fund and Nike and the Port of Portland are putting on a gala benefit to support the scholarship efforts, including scholarships that we give to Portland State and Lewis and Clark and Oregon State and University of Oregon.
Great, great. Birol, you have any
for
factoid
that.
you want to impart to us about the Consular Corps or
No,
about Portland State University?
No,
Or
it's wonderful to have that opportunity here. And our, at least 2 departments I know have been very engaged with the Consular Corps, and our Office of International Affairs has been working very closely with the Consular Corps. We find it as an opportunity to get our students to realize what opportunities exist for them, whether they can volunteer and work. the relationship is actually, I see several legs here, and representatives are here. U.S. Trade Office, the World Affairs Council, Consular Corps, and our international programs. We couldn't do what we do without your help. So
we have,
thank you.
We have young people in our audience from Roosevelt High School today. And if other young people want to perhaps do an internship that focuses on international economy, that maybe focuses on Germany, Malaysia, Turkey, I mean, are there opportunities through your responsibilities for young people to maybe do some sort of an internship?
There are. Germany offers, Germany's big on training and training its workforce. The German Academic Exchange Service is the official program of the German government for students to go to Germany, work sometimes in the federal parliament there, the Bundestag, and also in businesses and universities. So there are opportunities there. We have a representative of the German Academic Exchange Service in San Francisco who helps coordinate those programs.
Okay, great. I think we're at the point, sorry to interrupt, but we are at the point where we need to go to questions and answers. And we are taking, people have index cards if they have a question written down. And then this is the opportunity for City Club members to also ask our panel a question. And I would remind the audience, you must be a City Club member to ask a question. And please limit your questions to no more than 30 seconds. And I believe we're going to give the first question to one of our civic scholars from Roosevelt High School today. He's not ready yet? Oscar, you're not ready?
We'll put him back in as soon.
Okay, he's still writing his question. Okay, so we'll go to you, ma'am. If you could just identify yourself, and then, as I said, keep your question to no more than 30 seconds.
Chris Andre, City Club member. Thank you all for being here today. This is a serendipitous occasion. I've just come from another meeting where we talked a great deal about emerging global markets. My question is regarding Malaysia and the palm oil industry, which has wreaked environmental havoc, and as well as environmental justice. What about this? My question for all of you is, what about, instead of focusing on a quantity of what we make and export, why not? We have way more stuff than we need. Why not instead focus the idea of growth on quality, not quantity? That way we don't sacrifice growth. We still have growth, but we focus on quality, not quantity.
Thank you, Chris. John, you want to take a stab at that response?
So since Malaysia was integral to that question, I feel compelled to respond. And it's a little bit hard to answer the question if you don't agree with the premise. And I do trust that the questioner understands the difference between Malaysia and Indonesia, contiguous countries with different track records in the area of palm oil production. So given the fact that we might agree on your premise, building on quality seems to me to be something that's an inarguable argument. I would totally agree.
Okay. Why don't we go to our next question?
Yes, Dave Porter, City Club member. Two related questions related to high school study abroad. We have high school students here. Would you recommend that it should be part of their education to spend a high school year studying abroad? The comment is, I've been trying for a number of years to get public schools in Oregon and in Portland to pay for a high school study abroad year. The cost from existing programs, nonprofit programs, study abroad programs, for a student to spend a year abroad in many countries is no less than what we spend per year per student in schools now. What would be your thoughts or your recommendations to the students? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll give that question to
I'll take
Beerold.
a shot at that. Yeah. You have a wonderful opportunity here in Portland and greater Portland area. How many of you young people in the audience know about Rotary Youth Exchange Program?
See a few hands going up.
Let me see your hands. Okay, you should apply and you should tell your friends in high schools that this is a wonderful opportunity. District 5100 Rotary is one of the most active in the world for youth exchange. All of your expenses are paid to spend 1 year overseas. And it's wonderful. I'm a Rotarian, and I have seen the benefits of this from students year in and year out. That's one opportunity for you. You have to apply through a Rotary Club, and if you get it, I don't think you will regret the experience.
Great suggestion. Rotary. Next question.
Hello, Charles DeRaagi, City Club member. I know that trade and international relations are more of a federal issue, but are local or state policies in any way hindering trade and international exchange currently? And is there anything that local or state officials or representatives could do to enhance trade and exchange?
Good question. Maybe we'll give that one to Robert first.
I think that local and state governments do a lot to promote trade. The trade visits that the governor historically takes periodically are one indication of that. We're blessed to have a very active group in the state's Economic Development Department, Business Oregon. Also here in the Portland area, Greater Portland Inc. Works very hard to promote those kinds of areas. I think getting over there, getting the word out, are the main things that government can do here locally, and I think overall, within the funding constraints that exist, they do a pretty good job.
John, do you want to answer that question too?
Yes, I don't want to go. We don't want to leave the impression that the federal government is part of the problem here, or is the problem. We have representatives with us today, and Scott Godden and Jennifer Wood. Raise your hand, please. Both representatives of the U.S. Department of Commerce, who are terribly valuable, supportive, encouraging, and successful in encouraging exports and imports. So understand that we have very strong proactive movements at both the state, the local, and the federal level.
Thanks, John. Okay, next question.
Yes. My name is Cynthia Harris, and I am a City Club member, and I have a yes or no question for the panel. What I'm interested in is getting this kind of information out to the diverse community so that everybody understands. And I would just like to know on your parts, is there a willingness to speak to groups or connect with groups in ways that are possible to get this more to the grassroots? I really think what you're doing is wonderful, and I've been involved in a lot of information like this. I'm part of the Rotary as well. So I'd like to know on your parts, is there a willingness to get this out to diverse communities here in Portland?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. It's a resounding unanimous yes, Cynthia. So you need to talk with them and arrange those opportunities. Okay, it looks like Oscar's ready with his question. Oscar from Roosevelt High School.
I will.
Take it away.
All right. My name is Oscar, and I'm a sophomore for Roosevelt, and I'm representing Civic Scholars. How can the younger generation make fair with the trade, like have fair trade with other places, so the people who are getting our supplies have like a better job and a better life, so they can support their families?
Yeah, great question. Beerold, you want to tackle that one?
Sure. Study hard. Learn about the world, learn about international economics, world politics, be engaged, and be an engaged citizen. The one thing that is disheartening to me is to look at the election campaigns around this country and see old people making choices for the new generations. If you consider how old our president is and how old the other candidates were, it's incredible. And I don't hear the younger generations coming out to take charge and be in the driver's seat. And that is problematic. And we need new blood. We need people who are informed citizens. I think that is my strongest suggestion to you. Be an informed citizen. Because uninformed citizens make very, very bad choices.
What about Oscar's? I think Oscar's point about fair trade. So what does it mean when we buy, I guess coffee comes to mind, fair trade coffee? Does that mean the people who harvested that coffee are getting paid fair wages, good living conditions? I mean, is it a cliche or does it really mean something? Beerold, I guess you're ready to answer that.
It's a double-edged issue because what you get with free trade is do you have gains and losses? That's inevitable. Some of the jobs that are lost will never come back. They're gone. They're gone to technology, they're gone to investments elsewhere. But when we talk about fair, is free trade supposed to be fair in terms of unfair practices of governments making their products competitive unfairly? The second is we need to be concerned if we are committed to sustainability, that's not just sustainability of the environment, but human beings. So labor conditions. I worry about TPP and United States pulling out because the vacuum, as I said, is going to be filled by China. And Chinese government does not care about environmental protectionism, labor, worker issues. But if you have an international agreement that pushes that, okay, China is not a member of TPP, but in terms of investments where everything's going to end up eventually, it will be at a disadvantage. United States has an opportunity as the largest market in the world to push for regulations that protect the environment, protect the work conditions, prohibit child labor, and so forth. But if we're not there, there is no number two powerful enough to push that.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to the next question.
My name's Kathy Moyd. I'm a member of the City Club, and I'm also a member of the Citizens Climate Lobby. In addition to the fair trade agreements, there's another international agreement that the current administration is either pulling out of officially, or even if they don't do that, they're basically not going along with the commitment that the U.S. has made for decreasing its greenhouse gas emissions. And so I'm wondering what the effect of that is on the international trade, Oregon and nationally.
Anybody want to take a step?
The scariest thing I saw recently about that is a short clip from the scientists showing what's going to happen down the road when the polar caps melt and which parts of the world will be underwater. Climate change is very real, and you can't reverse it easily at all. And it also has a logarithmic effect. And we are on that rise, and nobody knows exactly what is the degree of the rise and the velocity of that. So when we pull out of these agreements or threaten to pull out and say anything goes, it's doomsday. So, recommendation, write to your representatives. Put the pressure on the representatives. After all, it is about you and I. It affects all of us.
Thank you. Next question.
Les Volstek, City Club member. What relationships within the Pacific Rim does Oregon cultivate through such agencies as the East-West Center at the University of Hawaii?
Robert, do you have any familiarity with that, or John?
I don't.
Or John? No?
I think we should turn to Birol again.
Okay, Beerold, yeah.
The Hatfield School of Government has a strong partnership with Vietnam and Japan. We want to expand our relationships. Hatfield School is probably one of the, if not the top, one of the top 3 institutions within PSU that has the most international activities going on. It's very busy there.
Good.
The government of Vietnam came to the Hatfield School and asked us to help them with training of their civil servants. That agreement is so huge that it was recognized and promoted by U.S. State Department. So there is huge potential there for us that there's a little gem sitting at Portland State called the Hatfield School of Government.
Great. Next question.
Nick Orphanakis, a City Club member. We've heard about trade, and it's very difficult to argue with the benefits of trade, and I'm glad to hear that fairness is coming into it too. But when I think of trade, exports from this country, it appears to me that the large volume of exports is raw resources going out, and we are bringing finished goods back into the country, which is a reversal of the way we had it before. Has anybody ever compared the tax base loss on the jobs that we gave away there and compared it to the tax base gain on servicing the imports coming the other way?
Robert or John?
So my emergent thoughts on that topic, the generalization would be that the breaking down of trade barriers enriches everyone. A rising tide floats all ships. As Birol points out, there are winners and losers. When I think about Oregon and our exports from Oregon, our largest export to Malaysia is electronics. Electronics that are made here in the state of Oregon and go there for assembly in various plants. Also look at Nike with their proprietary Air soles. They're made here with the new Cathay Pacific international trade. They're flown abroad. They're incorporated in shoes. They're brought back here. I don't necessarily look at our exports as being extractive for value added elsewhere. I don't think that's quite true.
I think we're out of time, or do we have time for one more question? Do we have one quick question? One remaining quick question.
Hello, my name is Jorge Guzman. I am a City Club member. And my question is, are there local initiatives that can be done to begin looking at countries like Mexico or Central America as not only producers of farm labor, but also technologies and producers in other sectors? And if those initiatives are something that could be implemented here, what could those initiatives be?
I'll hand that to Robert. You get the last word. It's a very thought-provoking question.
Very thought-provoking. I am not very familiar with local initiatives involving Mexico and those countries, I'm afraid to say.
Okay. Well, I think we're out of time. I want to thank our panelists, Robert Manicke, Honorary Consul General to Germany, John Blackwell, Honorary Consul General for Malaysia, and Beerold Yesilada, Professor of Political Science and International Studies at Portland State University. Thank you all.
And before we conclude today's program, I want to give a special welcome to the Consul of Mexico in Oregon, Francisco Mas Peña, who's with us here today. Thank you so much for coming. We are out of broadcast time for today. If this program has inspired you to join or contribute to City Club, you can do so at the table in the back as you leave. This is David Thompson, Board Treasurer of City Club of Portland. Thank you to our guests, and a special thank you to Daniel Capuya for our Friday Forum Committee. Our program is adjourned. Thank you.